Hi, once again, welcome to the first conversation for Festival for Good 2020. My name is Simin. I'm from Race, and I'll be your moderator for this panel. Today, we're going to talk about collaborations for impact. No man is an island, and for us to have any sustainable or long-term impact, we will need to partner and work with others. Therefore, we have chosen this topic to kickstart our conversation series for Festival, as we believe that this is key to make anything happen or change. At Race, we are a sector developer. We have more than 350 social enterprises members. And with a lean team, we believe in harnessing the strengths of our external stakeholders, build the ecosystem so that we can multiply the impact and the support that we can have for social enterprises and the sector. With the current shift in mindset from a commitment to shareholders to a focus on stakeholders and the communities that the companies operate in, I think we want to explore the roles of social enterprises and how organizations can actually leverage on working with the social enterprises to achieve their sustainability goals. Today, we'll get to hear from social enterprises and corporates alike the different perspective and experience in building partnership and collaboration. From the social enterprises, we have Stanley Lim from Findjobs, Peter Young from Empact, and for the corporate world, we have Ms. Enzu from Johnson & Johnson and James Tay, who used to run a social enterprises and now is in the corporate world. So I'll get them to introduce themselves and some time to come and the work that they do. Maybe we can start with Stanley. My understanding is that Findjobs works a lot with government agencies. And in Singapore, government is actually the biggest buyer or consumer of products and services, yet many social enterprises and SME find difficulties in getting the projects awarded to them or even starting a conversation or collaboration. Perhaps you can share a bit of your experience and how Findjobs managed to scale out within the last year and why government agencies have kind of agreed to work with you.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Sumin. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Stanley. I'm the founder of Findjobs. So let me start with just explaining what Findjobs does. Okay, so Findjobs is actually a tech startup focusing on creating an inclusive digital solutions for our disadvantaged workforce. So by making online jobs easily accessible to our local blue collar, the low income, even the non-tech savvy, or even the mature job seeker is our priority, right? Of course, for now, to allow the user to go on digital and online for the job search allows them to actually have more opportunity to search for more jobs anytime, anywhere. So for Findjobs, we actually build based on very much on the user experience, and we have like very cool features like scanning jobs nearby, and even a chatbot assisted resume creation. Okay, of course, along the way, we started with two experience with some collaboration with certain partners that we don't get paid at all, So usually that's the case where we call it a pilot program, with certain agencies. So of course, during this pilot program, we need to actually show them the results, especially when we talk about job matching, we need to show them the statistics that we collect, in our backend data. So we are very lucky that after our pilot project, we have a chance to partner with social service officers and agency for integrated care by actually supporting their clients with our job tech solutions. So since last April, we actually launched the NTUC Job Security Council Job Station together with NTUC E2I. So this job station actually deployed across 30 locations island-wide in Singapore. So the intention is to actually bring jobs to the heartland, right? So essentially, I felt a digital solutions needs to be able to connect the user to be useful for them and eventually creating a longer lasting impact. So this is what we have done at Findjobs with our mobile apps and job stations. And we are, of course, grateful to the work that we have been recognized so far. And we are honored to have, able to work with, partners from the government agencies. Yes.
Just wondering, I mean, you mentioned that for the pilot programs, right, you started with like no payment. Do you think this is a way to get in to start off a collaboration? Sorry, Stanley, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it's really depending on how you view the collaboration. And of course, the partner who are you going to work with. For us, doing a job platform, if you have a chance to work with Employment and Employability Institute, it's definitely something that we are stepping on, something as we progress. I would see this as an opportunity, rather than a disadvantage, program that we are working with them. Because if you have this opportunity to pilot something, it's a really a test out, whether does we really have the proof of concept, the validation, not only just from the market, but from the agency like them. So to me, I would see this as a very good opportunity to actually have pilot, program, to start off. So yeah, it's really an opportunity to show the proof of concept.
Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Maybe we move on to Peter first. I mean, we go round and then we'll come back again with other questions. So for Peter, Empact's work actually hinges a lot on partnership because you do a lot of like matchmaking between corporates and also social organization. Maybe you can share a bit on your challenges in curating, or how do you align the goals of the corporates and also the social enterprises or the charities that you work with, and whether it's been difficult to get people to be interested in working with social enterprise.
Right. Thank you, Sunil. I think thank you for having me. And maybe I start sharing a little bit about what Empact is about, and then maybe that can help setting a little bit of context about why we are doing and why we are curating partnerships on a daily basis. I would say, Empact's mission, we are social enterprise. Our mission is really build the capacity for other nonprofits and social enterprise, right, in the area of like finance, HR, IT, and etc. Right. So it started from me. I used to come from a corporate world, being a finance sort of trained person when I started volunteering. More than 10 years ago, I find really I'm not very good with children and elderly. I started using my skills to volunteer for charity at the time. And I was just amazed to see that despite our charity are doing great work, they really kind of find it's really challenging to have the budget to recruit the talents who can really do the corporate function, right? Like, we need to be accountable to donors, get the finance sorted out, and increasingly, we need to do marketing, and we need to have good HR system. Despite that, in Singapore, we have so many talent, but the talent are largely in the corporate sector. And for the charities or even for social enterprises, it's very hard for us to attract the talent. So Empact's mission is to help them to build the capacity. And one of the way of us doing it is trying to leverage those highly skilled talents who are working in the commercial sector, channel them to our social sector with their skills, with their time. Without necessarily they needing to quit their jobs, and without necessary that our charity to have to increase their fundraising target just to hire the people. So end of the day, channel skilled volunteer from individual and corporate world is one way of us sort of doing the capacity building, right? So in that context, I think the benefits is very clear that we can get charities through us can get access to many talents they otherwise would never be able to afford. And at the same time, we're providing a very meaningful kind of volunteer opportunities to people might like me, who may not necessarily enjoy or have the skill sets to engage beneficiaries, but are actually very good at what they do, right? So in this context, we have to build a lot of partnerships on a daily basis, right? I think there's a few sort of challenges. I can talk briefly, and later I can share a little bit more. I think inherently, like any industry, right? So when you are from a for-profit world, helping not-for-profit world, inherently, also even social enterprise, right? Inherently, our drive, our motivation, our language are all very different. So that context actually sometimes could be a very challenging things we have to bridge the context in order for the conversation and communication to become more effective. And second, I will always say, even volunteer are free in a way that resources are free, but actually volunteer is not free. Because we both has to, even on the receiving end, we have to invest a lot of the time to understand each other's motivation, right? To understand what drives each other. So in order for us to appreciate the connection that we have, right? So usually that's kind of the second challenge. We often forgot that, yes, we are doing it for free, or we are doing it on our passion, but there are more than what is the impact that we want to create. And I think last but not least, I think it's about, how do we come together, build trust on a very short-term basis, and knowing we are from different parts of the world. We come from different structures. Our intention are different, despite, we want to create a common good. How do we team up in a short period of time? How do we build trust with each other so that the work created, can really sustain and bring a bigger impact? So these, I think, context, kind of building the trust and understanding each other's motivation and the work with each other. These are usually the challenges I encounter when I'm doing the matchmaking and broking the different parties together.
In your line of work, do you find that more corporates are actually leaning towards social enterprises now? Or like you mentioned, like in the past, a lot of the skills-based volunteering, they go towards charities. Is there a trend of corporates working with social enterprises?
I think we start to see more corporates are starting to be aware of social enterprise and then are happy to support social enterprise. I think we are at a kind of early stage, getting interest, creating the awareness. I would say that it is looking good. Certainly, I hope more, but I think that is really just the start of the journey. And I feel that many of the corporate partners we worked with find that actually supporting social enterprise makes a lot of sense, because their skills are a lot more directly transferable, because at the end of the day, social enterprise is a business, right? So the context or understanding each other the barrier becomes easier, right? So that was one. And second, many of our corporate partners find that working with social enterprise brings some form of new idea and new enthusiasm, or sometimes a little bit of innovation to how these organizations are doing things, right? I can give an example. One of our corporate partners, they have the marketeers to come and support one social enterprises. And at a kickoff meeting, they were supposed to come up with a marketing strategy. They asked the social enterprise how much, who has been running for 10 plus years. They asked, how much marketing budget do you have? The social enterprise said, I have zero. So the corporate volunteer was very surprised. How do you manage to survive and grow with $0 marketing budget? And that kind of challenged our volunteer as well to think out of the context and be creative with very limited resources.
Okay. Maybe now we go to Enzu. I mean, from a corporate side, I mean, you guys are getting more, Johnson & Johnson is like getting more interested and working with social enterprises. Maybe you can share some of the examples of partnerships that you have done with social enterprises, and perhaps share with us what were the considerations to start working with social enterprises to begin with, and if there are any internal hurdles and challenges that your team has to go through just to push it. Yeah.
Thanks, Simin. So hi everyone, my name is Enzu, and I work with passionate individuals from Johnson & Johnson who would like to do good for the community around us. But today, I'm here not necessarily representing the view of Johnson & Johnson, but my personal experience working in the corporate sector and also partnering with social enterprises. So answering your question, Simin, there are our recent experiences come in about two parts. First, we worked with a social enterprise called Jeon as a way to fundraise in an innovative way, which is an e-commerce site called Heart's Gift. What we did was, what the website was about, was it was working with 48 social enterprises and charities where the youth and the children and the artisans that work with these 48 organizations can sell their goods and items. And as a company, our employees were able to enjoy, either donate or purchase the items so that they can also contribute to the community around us. So that's one way that we sort of work with Dachis as a vendor of service. So it went through the procurement process, as you can imagine, as a service provider. And second bit, this one is in a close partnership with Peter's team, Empact. So we offered a skills-based volunteering with 13 social enterprises. And as Peter mentioned, they're very much in nature of business. So for instance, with Mentidote, for one, they are providing education for the mental health, and they needed to ramp up and do better job in branding and marketing communication. So as you can see in Johnson & Johnson, we have many renowned brands, Listerine, Johnson & Johnson babies, Aveeno. So we have a lot of marketers who know how to grow these brands and communicate better in the marketplaces. And that skills are quite transferable. So that's how we work with social enterprise Empact itself to be able to provide and facilitate that forum, but we also contribute to the extended network of social enterprises to be able to also help them as well. And the challenges that you asked about, there are about 3-4 parts. First, I think it's the awareness bit, as Peter mentioned. So if it's charity, we have been working with it for a long time and no debate. But when it comes to social enterprise, it's still a company. So is it nonprofit? Is it NGO? What are they? So there's a bit of education that's needed. But once you get over that part, I think the team is quite on board with the needs to support them and also create more sustainable and longer term impact for that organization. And second bit is the resistance a little bit and the barriers on long-term engagements. If you think about really good work that we can do and partner with social enterprises is also long-term. We wouldn't be going in, for a short time and come out, but we really want to engage with them maybe 3 months, 4 months. So we really work on a project as a team. For that, your volunteering model or employee engagement model has to change, where the employee has to spend a lot more time with that charity, with the social enterprise partner over a longer term, which they may not be used to. And third part is the metrics has to change for a company, because the way we typically measure our CSR, it could be donation, or grant making, or any kinds of donations. It could be time the volunteers spent or number of volunteers who were engaged in these activities. But what this type of skills-based volunteering with social enterprises, actually the impact could be much bigger if we set that as a target. But if you look at the number of employees who are engaged by event-based, it's much smaller. So there has to be a bit of a shift in thinking, and also looking beyond what's going to be your short-term number. There is a bit of a strategic discussion that you need to do with the broader organization on where you want to move the needle versus the rah-rah events that you might want to have with your colleagues. So I think that's that in terms of the challenges that I would like to share.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about matrix changing, right? And I think this is always the key driver for any organization, because how you set your KPI, then the people will behave accordingly. So I mean, you mentioned that you started working with Duggies as a vendor, a service vendor, because they provide you with the gifts and you work out with that. And of course, skills-based volunteering. I mean, I'm also interested to understand is how are you guys looking to integrate this in part of your business? Like, is it a bit more than CSR? You mentioned about becoming a bit longer term, but about how then to take it forward, I suppose that's the question that I wanted to ask. Yeah.
As mentioned, we are very much in the early stage still, but if I sort of try to envision what might happen down the road, one is in our procurement system, we could potentially have a rating that could give a preferential treatment over social enterprises, as an example. So when we have CSR event or internal meetings, I mean, with COVID situation, we can't really have a meeting inside, but when we cater food, we would consider catering food from social enterprises versus our regular vendors. So I think that's one way to also support. And second, on the skills-based volunteering and more longer-term engagement, solving the problem or challenges that these organizations face, that would be in the format of secondment. We have already started the work with charities where we are looking to send our employees, relatively senior in the organization, to work full-time with the charities. And paid, and that their salaries will continue to be paid by Johnson & Johnson, but spend their time and skills entirely for the charity. I would envision that this could also happen for social enterprises as this concept evolves.
I think this will come as a very good news to the social enterprises who are listening, and maybe for the corporates who are in our audience, maybe this is something you can look about to do. And let's go to James now. I mean, like mentioned earlier, James used to be a founder of a social enterprise, and now he's in the corporate world. So James, my question to you will be, are there inherently any differences, I mean, in terms of partnership or factors of consideration when you are as a SE or whether you are in the corporate world now? And would there be anything that you would do differently, I mean, given your experience now, if you go back in time when you're running your social enterprise?
Great. Yeah, thanks for the questions, Zimin. And first of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to, share some of my thoughts at this festival. And, to set the context, I would like to say, definitely the scale is something that's very different, right? When I was running my social enterprise, it was called T.ware. We were basically a company that developed our own wearable technology for catering to children with sensory disorder, like children with autism. It would, be considered a small business, small company, small startup, right? In fact, and the scale that I'm operating now, I'm actually working at Google. I lead the business development team for Southeast Asia. Though, I wanted to share the views that I have from a personal perspective, having been in both the startup world as well as from a very large MNC right now. The scale is definitely different, right? To an extent, the most obvious difference to me would be the number of stakeholders, internal stakeholders that I have to work with is really many of them compared to when I was running my small startup, right? For example, I'm working daily, right? Or even on a frequent basis with different teams. While I'm in the business development team, I work with people from product, policy, legal, compliance, marketing, sales, to name a few. So you get the extent that, this internal stakeholder management is actually very complicated compared to having that, let's say, that partnership with another smaller startup company, right? So I think the main point here is that, for partnerships to work, it is important that the social enterprise on the other side, figure out what is this structure like, right, in the company, in the corporate company that you want to partner with, and figure out how to help your counterpart actually manage the internal stakeholders. I wanted to mention also a few hallmarks of what I see as a good partnership, and some of this I think Peter has also covered earlier in terms of understanding the motivation of the company as well as the individual you're working with. Building trust, right? These are really two important points I'd like to call out. Further to add on, I would say, right, aligning goals is very important, right? So this is, without aligned goals, essentially the partnership would not be sustainable. And you cannot just, talk about your own goals, right? In terms of, okay, this is what I want to do as a company, but you have to really understand what drives their business, right? Essentially, corporate still, goes back to whether it's revenue or users or generating some kind of how to say, even if the project does not make a profit, it cannot be a cost center, right? It cannot be costing the company money in the longer run, because that would not be sustainable. Number two, right, I would like to add on is to have a clear roadmap. Having a clear roadmap is important because, as I mentioned, your counterpart most likely would have to manage multiple stakeholders at the other end, right? And having this clear roadmap, agreed upon roadmap, helps both sides to stay accountable. And in addition, right, it also helps your own team, right? If you have a team, assuming it's a small to medium-sized business, it helps your team focus on their efforts towards achieving this goal. Number three, I would say, and this is one point that on hindsight, I wish that I had invested more time in, is to engage the executives at the other end, right? I don't mean the counterpart you're working with, but C-level executives, right? Director level executives. Because, you know, at a large MNC or corporate, typically a lot of decisions hinge upon the executives lending their support, right? So while it's important for you to work well with your direct counterpart, it is also important for you to engage and get support, buy-in from the company's key executive. It doesn't matter if, you know, their company, which is big or small, right? It is still important to get decision makers buy-in, right? And this would ensure that the project gets enough support from the company, as well as, you know, get stronger accountability from them, right? So I would say that these are some of the summary I have in terms of what are the differences between, you know, being in running a startup social enterprise and being in a corporate world.
I wanted to go on to your point about engaging the decision makers, right? So I wanted this question to all our panelists, but I'm just thinking that for Stanley, I mean, decision makers in government agency, there are many, many layers, right? How do you know who do you work with? That is there an inroad that you already have, or like you just keep knocking on doors? I mean, because I'm just listening to like what James mentioned, and I think it's really true, right? Even at your counterpart level, if they are agreeable to it, they still have many levels to clear before it can actually proceed. So maybe, I mean, first Stanley can share about how you get through to the government agency, and maybe the panelists can jump in at any time.
Okay, thanks, Sumin, for the question. I think for us is that we are lucky in a way when we actually started doing our Findjobs, right? We actually get some, we get noticed by NTUC, right? So when this they have noticed us, this where naturally they just want us to share our product to the partners, who is the E2I partner. So we are very lucky in a way we managed to meet the right team who are piloting this program. So when we able to share what Findjob does is, I mean, when we actually present our job station idea to them, is that, you know, it really, you know, rings a bell to them that that's something that need, you know, because traditionally, you know, they are doing the work very manually, very labor intensive. But with a solution in the technology, you know, it really gives them a really a good thinker that, you know, with technology like that, you know, probably can actually save more man hours or eventually on the cost and to have a great outreach. So this is something that what we want, you know, when actually we started Findjobs, right? We want to outreach to the non-tech savvy user. It can be, you know, people who doesn't even know how to use a mobile phone. So I think that, you know, aligns our objective, you know, to, you know, with our product, they can outreach the workforce that they have been trying to, you know, spend so much money on the ground to actually makes them come in. Now with a digital product, they can do it even faster, you know, and a lower cost. So it's where we actually speak through the heart to them, and they say that yes, you know, we have to try to use this because unlike the current product in the market, it's really you are really unable to tap on this, you know, the non-executive workforce like what we are working on. So for our case, yeah, it's really the right product that we have. The right agency speaks to us. So I would say that's how the doors are open to us in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. There's been questions on the Q&A. I think one of the key questions is that SEs are usually a bit smaller, less known, and those who have been working with big corporates are more known. I guess that's how the cycle goes, right? So if someone works with a particular brand and everyone starts to work with them. So I think the audience want to know how can small social enterprises in the early phase gain entry to working with a corporation or maybe make themselves known. Yeah. Anyone who likes to take the question? Maybe Enzu, you can share how you came across with Duggies. I mean, how do you start working with them?
Dakis is through our partnership, not as a company, but with individual in our organization who work with NCSS. So that's the connection that was built. And also Peter as well in that context. And then, the tote event that had happened for the grant making in this space also was an opportunity for us to get to know about Peter's organization. So based on those two examples, it's really having your organization be aware, on the list of those key events. And I think at the same time, something that I'm hearing as feedback is your service and product that you offer actually has to be corporate relevant and of high quality. So that cannot be compromised. Once that's established, I think getting your marketing done and getting the reach into the corporate, I think would be happening. Peter, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I agree. I listened to James. I find that that's a good advice for me. And I feel that even for myself, I don't do enough running an SC that I think the opportunity to get access to decision maker, especially if it's government or if it's large MNCs, I feel that opportunity that are very rare. And then as a social entrepreneur, I don't think we do enough to get ourselves in there. And I hear Stanley's conversation and also Enzu's point. I feel it's really about having the right product. If your product or if your service is solve a particular problem of the corporates or the government, and I think you'll naturally well be there, right? So I hear Stanley's case is really that you have the right solution for the right government kind of stakeholders who are encountering this issue. So that's where it's easier to pave the way to have a more strategic conversation. And second, I feel is really, I feel that there's another way is really leveraging intermediaries like Empact, like, Raise. And I think that's how, in Enzu's case, the Mentido, they are really at the early stage, right? If they knock on the door of Johnson & Johnson, I think probably will take them a little bit harder or much longer routes to get there. But tapping on the existing relationship Empact already have with Johnson & Johnson, that then Empact comes in and provides some sort of assurance to J&J that, hey, actually the social enterprise we bring in are valid, they really have a challenge and etc. So tapping on intermediary like us or Race, I think it would be a good way to go. And the third thing I find it was very powerful is leveraging your individual networks. I think, many of individuals, they work with companies, right? And if you happen to have some stakeholders that work with certain big corporates, your existing supporters, ask them to be your ambassador for the companies. And I think many cases I have seen that is really through the internal networking, through the employees that they have brought the awareness to the corporates. And the last but not least, attending different sort of networking events and make yourself relevant. I think that will obviously be a great way as well.
Thank you, Peter. I'm doing a plug in here too. Like what Enzu mentioned, getting seen at big events or certain events will be a good way to start. So, we have 130 social enterprises that will be showcased in Festival for Good. So those of you out there, I think it's a good place to start. There have been some other questions about engaging C-suite and that the results of overselling. Because the person who engages the C-suite tends to be probably business development or the sales team, whereas the actual delivery of the service or product may have a gap. What do you feel about this current situation? Whether do you think it's really happening, or do you think that,
Yeah, I can actually take a stab at that first. Thanks, Albert, for that question. I think I have been in that situation before, right? Previously, when I was running T.ware, you oftentimes want to win business. So there was this one project where, I worked with the car company Audi, right? So, a small company like us, what are we doing with such a big company like Audi? So totally appreciate that question, can relate to it. There's some kind of tendency to want to project, okay, this is the vision, but whether it's doable or not, we don't care, we leave it to later. But on hindsight, again, I think this would be the advice, is that never oversell, right? Sure, you want to set the difference between this is the vision, this is your mission, and then this is what doable right now. And the other tip here is that don't go directly to sell to the C-level, right? I mean, with these big companies, work with the counterpart, maybe the manager person who will be the project manager on the other end, and work out those details, right? Oftentimes at the working level, people have more details in terms of what's workable and what's not. Once you have a holistic plan, and do engage that with the C-level. So taking a cue from like what Stanley was sharing, for example, you have that project which already caught the attention of the decision makers. That's a very good starting point, right? So you work out the details. You can have like a monthly engagement with the decision makers to keep them apprised, and from there on, you continue to get more sustainability and longevity in your, whether it's a partnership or whether it's a sales situation.
Thanks, James, for taking that question. I'm just wondering, we want to take a step at our topic today of why people should choose to work with social enterprises. It's given, of course, Peter and Stanley coming from a SE, it's your pitch of why people should work with you, but also for Enzu and James, in a way, you guys are now the champions for the social enterprises, right? In your various workplace. Like, how do you sell the idea of working with social enterprises? Because earlier we mentioned about awareness and education. Not many people know about them, but what is it about social enterprise that you find that actually kind of tilts it and allow your colleagues to say that they want to work with them? Yeah. So it's kind of a question to all of you, but probably from a different perspective.
I think for internal selling, for lack of better words, it fits connected, and I can sort of build a narrative around the purpose of the company. I think that works really well. So for Johnson & Johnson, we have a Credo, which is our framework for our decision making. And first focuses with our patients and customers, second with employees, third with community, and then fourth is our shareholders. So our financial purposes actually come last, and community is specifically spelled out. So internal buy-in, and I think for the social enterprises, as you engage with your corporate partners, I think understanding the context and culture of the corporate, I feel that would greatly help as well. And second, I mentioned this earlier, but your relevance to the business, it is critical. That cannot be negotiated. So I think that would be something you can perhaps look further into and sharpening down the road before engaging with the corporate stakeholders.
Yeah, I actually want to add on to that. So, I really want to stress on understanding the company's mission is really important. So you're aligning not just the short-term goals, right? You're trying to understand what could be a long-term kind of overlap. You might want to look at what are their recent announcements, recent launches. It can be a project on the social mission. It can be a product-related kind of launches. If you craft that, if you craft a proposal anchoring those things that the company cares about, I think you stand a stronger chance of success. Of course, like I think that you would also have to include key success metrics, for example, right? Whether it's in terms of achieving certain social impact goals or enhancing branding and awareness for the company. I know that, being an SE, you probably talk about contributing to the revenue for the company last, but if it's something which is doable, right, you just be brave enough to even suggest that as a metric. Yeah.
That will take a brave soul and a lot of persuasion, I believe, to change the matrix. Peter and Stanley, you want to take a try on this question of why should people work with social enterprises?
Maybe I can come maybe more and not at what James mentioned on the business partnership level. I feel that will be the ultimate goal that we all want to aspire to. But maybe I take within the Empact context is more on the volunteering and skill-based volunteering kind of context on the capacity building as a goal. I felt, tapping on what Enzu said, I think maybe pandemic has kind of speed up the employee looking for purpose. I think many companies are started to looking for purpose. Not many are like Johnson & Johnson, they have clearly spelled out, community as one of the priority, and then there's a buy-in into it. But there are many companies who have started looking for purpose, and they find purpose to engage the employees, especially the younger working force. And I think, COVID-19 has just accelerated that, right? So if you for competing for talents, if you can't sort of provide them meaning, there may be something that there will be a gap from the talent point of view. So that's one is like working with SE definitely provides a opportunity to for your employees to achieve their purpose, to search for their purpose, and etc. Right? And then second thing, I think I shared that before that SEI is just so much relatable for all the corporates, because at the end of the day, they are also a business. The way of we think running a business is very applicable. So the learning curve is not as steep as if we was straight away jump into a charitable context. All right, so that's the second thing. The third thing is I feel that in my sort of brokering or partnership, I find that many of our corporate volunteers at the beginning, they want to contribute, but at the end of the day, they actually learned a lot. They have learned a lot from an agile way of doing things. Some of them being inspired by the mission and the vision of the SE. Some of them have seen things in a very different manner, and sometimes they even, they have learned how to work with colleagues from different departments, and then they were just amazed at themselves, as sometimes in work it may take long to achieve certain things, but with social enterprise, because there's less stakeholder, they spend less time, but they manage to achieve a lot more. So that level of satisfaction, the level of learning, and sort of kind of inspire the individuals. That's how I have seen from my own experience. And last but not least, I do see some organization, finding inspiration even from a business model point of view, learning from how some of the SE are integrating the social and business aspect, and that inspired some of my clients to, to really think, can our business ultimately be somewhat social as well?
Yeah, I guess scale works differently, right? I mean, we may not be able to, social enterprises tend to be a little smaller, so they don't do the scale like what James mentioned compared to maybe bigger corporates. But the satisfaction comes in different manner, because probably it expedites a lot of decision making, because it's a lot less, I guess, level. So Stanley, someone was asking, is there any differences in selling to corporate agencies compared to selling to government agency compared to corporates? Yeah, you are the only one who works a lot with, actually Peter, you also work a lot with, maybe both of you can take an answer on this. Is there any difference in selling to government than to corporates?
Okay, thanks for the questions. I think for us, people really view us as a social enterprise, a member of RACE. I mean, a lot of our partners, be it the corporates or agencies, view us as a social enterprise. So, how we actually are able to, get so much contact with them is that, I mean, more important is just to focus on the common outcome, where be it the corporates or the government agency and the SE can work together to achieve a social impact. I think that, it's not about just selling, it's about creating that impact that I believe every work that SE are doing, government also trying to, to do the impact to our people. And to talk about, moving forward beyond just, doing the social work together to achieve the mission, I think as you scale along, I think it's always good to check with partners, really ask for an MOU rather than a CSR kind of project title. So I guess as you're actually able to work deeper with organization, be it a corporates, a big MNC, or even a government, I think to be able to tell them that you need a MOU rather than just a CSR project, is always able to improve, the social mission for both sides.
So I guess it's also a mindset change, right? From
Yes.
moving from CSR or like it's a bit more charitable work, whereas working with social enterprises, I guess, is also part of your supply chain. It's part of the business, so that if the business do well, actually social enterprises will also do well along with it. Yeah. Maybe one last question from the Q&A. Someone was asking that there's a lot of price differential, even though there are people who are willing to support social enterprises, but the price differentials kind of deter one from purchasing. They're wondering how do you overcome the price difference barrier and mindset? Maybe Stanley, do you have any idea on this? Like, do people think that you cost more because you're a social enterprise versus that? I mean, of course, I think nowadays, staying at home and shopping online, there's really, really a lot of cheap options out there, whether buying from Taobao or the likes of that, right? So maybe, yeah, this one last question we try to answer, and then I will close up the session. So how do we overcome price difference barrier and mindset in our support for social enterprises versus maybe other alternatives out there? Anyone?
I can, okay, maybe I just jump with the earlier question on the government point. And I think we work a lot with different government agencies and all the things. And I think many of the SEs that are providing service to government, right? Inherently, I find working with government may not be as easy sort of as compared to corporates. From the perspective or to sort of, I see there are three types of social enterprises, how they partner with government. You know, when Stanley said there's one type of social enterprises who really fits well with government's agenda and then can partner very easily, and your business model does not require government to pay. You know, so in that category, it's much easier to partner with government, right? On the other extreme, we have also SEs that pick up on not so popular causes and with a certain advocacy type of agenda who may not fit in with the government's agenda, and because they inherently want to change the system. And I think that type of social enterprise, I think the job is much more challenging. And I think the strategy I see work really well from some of the organizations, really engagement, right? So yes, we want to change the status quo. I think in Singapore, you know, engaging with the stakeholder, remain in conversation works a lot better. So that is kind of the extreme end of the category. And in the middle, I mean, like us or others that provide service, I think inherently we are on GBiz competing with any other vendors, right? So maybe corporate sometimes has a little bit more kind of check mark to say we're a social enterprise. They would, you know, based on CSR, give us a little bit sort of leeway. But from a government point of view, you know, GBiz is GBiz, and I think end of the day is really about our value proposition from a business point of view, how we can compete with other business. Having said that, and I also felt that there's a lot more to be done in terms of awareness. You know, personally, I always encountered, you know, when I present at a tender, I said I'm a social enterprises. I felt that there's an emotional barrier to say, can you really deliver from a government ministry point of view to say you are a social enterprise? Well, yeah, are you safe? Is it safe to choose you? I had that kind of question a lot from government agencies. And I sometimes, you know, if my price comes in the middle, and then we'll get a question to say, why is this SE so expensive? But at the end of the day, I think it's not about the we being expensive or not. It's really about the value proposition, because on the GBiz or on open market competition basis, at the end of the day, it's about value proposition and the value that we can deliver. And I think for most of the SE that are in that category, you know, I would say that partnering with government doesn't play. Being an SE may or may not be a good card to play. But at the end of the day, it's really about value proposition that we can deliver and assurance that we can give to that stakeholder.
Yeah, and I think that also goes back to the point that Enzu brought up earlier, right? I mean, ultimately, it's about the quality of your products, and it needs to be relevant. I mean, if your product and service is not good enough or is not relevant, then it's a moot point, right? Whether you are a social enterprise or not, there's no discussion to talk about. Yeah, I mean, thanks for all the sharing. As the moderator, Enzu, you want to share something?
I wanted to just add, when I read this question, there were sort of three things that come to my mind. Because at the end of the day, when you're marketing a product, it's really about justifying the value for money. So if it's not appreciated, either you haven't done enough marketing to add the flares and the justifications for your product. If that's not the case, it's about target. Maybe you are targeting the wrong audience. So I think I would approach this as a marketing problem as you look at the mix. And if that really is not the case, another approach that you can do, which the private companies cannot do, is really showing your value chain, the breakdowns of the costs, because social enterprises, it's not for profit per se. So I think you would have a bit more room to share a little bit more how, through your value chain, why this cost is justified versus other vendors who would be solely for profit.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose now, I mean, we are in the same point of that. I mean, there was a question about whether social enterprise is a good card to play towards corporates as well. I mean, by listening to all the sharing, I'm just thinking that first and foremost, products and services have to be good and worth the money. And then being a social enterprise, I would suppose that it will become a bonus to the corporates or even the government agency to be able to work with them, because then beside getting good products and services, you're actually delivering and helping to reach a certain social outcome. So I have a last question for all our panelists today before we close the session. Is after listening to the panel discussion and the questions being asked, what is one action that you think our audience can take today towards working partnership and collaboration for impact? And what is one action that you yourself will take after today? So yeah, this is not rehearsed. So for those of you out there thinking that this has been rehearsed, I didn't even share with them that I was going to ask this question. So I will give them some time to think about it, while on my part, I will share what I think I would do. So one action that I think I will do after today's suggestion discussion is that maybe we can start at RAISE to think about having some networking sessions with C-suites. I mean, I'm hearing that this is a way to go and to probably introduce some of the smaller or lesser known social enterprises doing great job. Yeah, so that's my action. Go back to the drawing board and think about what networking session we can do. One action that I think the audience today can do is to please serve our festival for good. There are 130 social enterprises. I know I'm doing the plug all the time, but really, I think this is really the singular platform that you'll be able to see so many social enterprises. So keep your mind open. Go to either the B2B experience or to the marketplace. Look out for the social enterprises, understand what they do. I'm not saying that you definitely need to start working with them today, but at least take the step to get to know them. You never know when their products and services will come in use one day. So yeah, that's my answer to the action. Peter, let me go to you now. What's one action you will take and what you will suggest for our audience to do?
Right. Okay. I find it's really interesting. I take the point about engaging, maybe not so C-suite, but maybe engaging with each other, given that we are the ecosystem, we are still in the early stage, right? So I give my personal example. Today I was actually inspired to hear Enzu's sharing about what the challenge she faced and what are the things she need to change, right? Despite we work with each other, at times we may not have enough time to spend with each other, understanding each other's challenge and how can we work together to solve that, because a lot of time we kind of know what we are dealing with, but yet not to that constant level and checking with each other, because at the end of the day, we are working with our different stakeholders and for the same objective, right? So for that, it's also about engaging with each other more, understanding each other, and to see how can we deepen the relationship and how can we sort of create things more sustainably. You know, I mean, many of you may not know Enzu do this on her volunteer basis. That's not her day job. so I felt, you know, just really engaging with each other, understanding how it is. That's the kind of one pledge that I will take. You know, I'm the same. I was messaging James because you know, he joined one of our program as a volunteer, and didn't even have time to understand from him, you know, what motivated from him, you know, how his experience has been so far. So I felt that, you know, as an ecosystem, we could do a lot more by, you know, building the trust and engaging with each other. So this is one thing that I will take on. For the audience, I feel maybe if there's a corporate in the room, I think maybe one thing I would pledge for is take a little bit of risk, right? Because social enterprise, by virtue that we are not big and then we are sort of new at the hybrid, maybe the concept is a little bit interesting that we have both business, we have social, that is a bit hard to understand, and at times, you know, our scale may not be as big. But if you could take some bit of risk, start small, and let the journey surprise you. Yeah, that would be my take.
Thank you. Enzu, would you like to take the next one?
Sure. My commitment is actually, I want to go back to our procurement department and see if there is a policy related to working with social enterprise. If there's anything I would like to find out specifically. And my thoughts for the audience who have joined, which I'm very thankful for. I think just based on the questions that just came in, I feel like my recommendation is to review and do the problem solving like a business. No bargaining because you're a social enterprise. I think if you start from there, I think the end outcome will be definitely great. And in working with corporates, just to share, from the moment that I was introduced, you know, the concept of skill-based volunteering and also all the social enterprises, it took almost a year and a half to have the business clinic. So it's quite a long journey. So just have that patience with us. Thank you.
James?
Yep, thank you. Finally, to wrap up, I think I'd like to connect the dots. Thanks, Peter, for mentioning that. In fact, tomorrow I have a chat with your team and some of the SEs. So I think my commitment towards this, and based on the questions that come out, so I think I can offer like pretty good guidance working with these SEs in terms of corporate strategy, right? In terms of how they approach and partner with corporates. This is something I would offer, as a commitment. In terms of what's good for the audience, I mean, I guess I would request, for you to share what we are talking about today on social media, check out Race's page, and share this broadly. I think, coming from the perspective of tech company and social media, these days there are so many platforms to help bring awareness to what you do, right? You can be putting this out on YouTube, on other social platforms, and you can get pretty much a lot of understanding already. Who knows, right? When you engage that particular C-level or executive, that person may have already seen your videos, right, or your story on one of these social media. So I'll say, make use of that. But first and foremost, remember to share this and help raise the profile of Race as well. So no, Zimi is not paying for that.
Oh yeah, you're definitely not paid. So this is a great advertisement for us. Stanley, last but not least. Stanley, we can't hear you.
Hello.
We still can't hear you.
Is it better?
Okay.
Hello? Yeah, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think what I wanted to shout out is actually to the corporates, or the bigger MMCs, that to look into a longer partnership like MOU rather than a CSR project would definitely help the SC to plan longer term on improving their solutions, achieving their social impact goals. So to the audience is that being in the tech space in the social enterprise, what I can say is that we hope that to see more SC to adopt more technology to broaden their impact they're already working on. So we hope that the SC out there can move on to more, adopting the technology to impact their business.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you.
panel. Thank you very much for the sharing today. I think I've learned a lot and I heard a lot as well. It's interesting, and I think some of the key things that we take away today is that we really need to start thinking for social enterprises to start thinking exactly like a business to provide good services and products, and then also to align of goals. And then, of course, from the corporate side or the government side, it's about understanding what the social enterprises are, what they do. So it's alignment of goals, I guess, on both ends. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. If you want to get in touch with any of our panelists, we're going to send across in the chat or their LinkedIn profiles so that you can just drop them a note. And like what James says, please share on social media, Razor's Festival for Good, as well as our conversation. This will be replayed on our page as well. So thank you, panelists. Thank you for coming on board. We hope to connect with you guys again very soon. Thank you.